Welcome to Getting Ghosted. This is an Intuitive Soul Collective podcast, and I'm your host, Allie Horner. Hey everyone, we are back, and I know that a lot of people are getting into the energy of 2026. I know it's an exciting time, and I wanted to talk about sit down with my guides and really talk through what we're sensing and seeing as the overall energy for 2026. Just a caveat, as usual, keep in mind that energy can shift and change, and that the entire collective and reality on Earth is that while there are a lot of things that do exist in soul themes in a larger collective blueprint, that does not mean that all events are set in stone. So there is a lot of free will and a lot of free choice, which means that there are many things that could shift and change these predictions that may change outcomes as we go throughout the year. So just keep that in mind before you listen, and let's get started. So I've got my guides here. I've got Sam sitting down in the chair. We've got Eric back here. And then I have a guide coming in called Julia, and she wants to come in and talk a little bit more about everything that's going on. Julia has channeled with me before, but I don't believe I've had her come through on the podcast or on any of my videos in the past. So she is showing up. She has lovely, dark black hair. She is showing me connections down in South America from her lifetime, but she said that she's a spiritual guide now. She's also showing up in a very colorful dress, and really beautiful bangles and earrings. And she has this beautiful sparkle in her eyes, almost like she had a rich, really dark brown eye color when she was alive. But now it looks like her eyes are filled with the galaxy, which is just beautiful and so stunning. And so I've got her here, and then I've got Sam and Eric, and they're like, what are we, chopped liver? Because I didn't give them a really beautiful description. But they are here nonetheless to talk through a little bit more of the energy of 2026. And they're clasping their hands together like, okay, let's get started. And they're like, me first. No, me first. So now the energy of 2026 is going to be a little bit more light and bright. They're showing me this as the overall theme for the year. And just so you guys know, when I shift into more of my intuition, because I'm using my intuition so much from day to day, linear time can feel a little funny for me. And so I see it as more of like a sphere that goes up and around me and above my head. And then when I look at events in time, they look almost like points, like that lights that shine almost like stars in the sky and the sphere. It's not just like a one linear line that goes from left to right or point A to point B. So I just want to mention that too, as I'm articulating things, that how I'm seeing them and how they're trying to show me things might be different. I think this is also why we can have certain things or points in time that are there, but the timing on them or the way that they happen or whether or not they actually happen can shift around. So just keep that in mind. And Eric just said, well, in the grander scheme of things, linear time isn't really real, but it does seem real for the sake of, life on Earth. And he said the third dimension reality is very different from when you start to use your intuition and your psychic ability more in mediumship. You start to shift into different dimensional realities. And in order to do that, your hold on time, the grip lessens a little bit. And he said, fifth is like much different. And so he said a lot of people who shift up to fifth a lot really struggle with staying in their bodies. So he said, for the sake of today, we're just going to talk about 2026 as an overall energy theme. I don't do a lot of event prediction. It's not something that I actually really enjoy. I also I like sometimes if something comes to mind and it pops in my head and it feels really strong, and I know that spirit is telling me, hey, say this right now, communicate this right now, great, I'll say it, I'll put it out there. But if something shifts or changes, or if they're not giving it to me to give to you guys in a reading or in the podcast, then I don't say it at all, because it's like it's literally not there. If they're holding the information back and don't want me to talk about it, they will literally like block it out of my head. So now that we're starting to talk about overall 2026, I will say, just from my perspective, without even bringing them into it yet, I have felt like 2026 feels a lot brighter. It feels a lot airier for me. I've even noticed like it's just such different weather this year. It's really bizarre. And this is my personal experience. We've had really different weather in Colorado. I'm in Denver, and it's just strange. Like, it has been so warm. We have been in the 50s and 60s for weeks now. We had a bunch of snow really early, like Thanksgiving time frame and just before. And now all of a sudden we are like in this, it's just warm. It feels like springtime. So it's very interesting to me. But overall, the energy of 2026 beyond that has just felt very, I do think there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, but overall, I've been feeling almost this like us getting our power back. And they're like, and right, you will, because they keep saying, well, you can only stay helpless for so long before you start to get activated and like almost like sick of what's going on and ready to rock and roll. And they keep showing me 2025, which was a catalyst year, which we talked about before. And you can go back to earlier episodes of the podcast. I believe like right around episodes 8 and 9-ish is when I talked about a lot of things I saw coming in the future and the energy of the future. 2026 is really just like our kickoff to this grand scheme and this higher shift of events. And so one of the things that they keep talking to me about is the ascension. And they're like, now in terms of ascension, like when you're really talking ascension, you're talking about death, because ultimately the ultimate ascension is out of the physical form. So without that, they're like, we want to talk about it from the state of like the evolution. And I did an episode a while back also called The Evolution of the Solar Plexus, which also talks about some of this, but they are showing me a lot of people having higher awakenings. And I noticed a lot of these, which I mentioned before, in December and in November. It was almost like a lot of people were like, I went to bed being my old self and I woke up just having these downloads and knowing things and not being able to stop thinking about what I was knowing and downloading and these connections to the other side. And it feels like the door has just popped open and I'm overwhelmed and it's exciting and bright. And it feels like I'm remembering things that I had long forgotten from some sort of like higher self or past life. And I'm like, I love this for you. Also, I know exactly how overwhelming this is. And so, cause I went through this and it was very fast. It was like overnight. And so a lot of the awakenings that are happening is that's the bigger energy that we are going to have to look forward to this year. I do think we are going to have a lot of light, bright, fun, funky, exciting energy going on this year. That said, the first couple months of the year for me have felt a little bit like not bad or good, just kind of like they're just there. I don't know how to describe it. It doesn't feel like it's like, oh my God, there's so much going on. Doesn't mean that there's going to be nothing going on, but it just feels like the overall energy is pretty normal, and or it's almost like maybe just a little bit stagnant. And that's how January has been feeling for the most part for me. You have to remember, for those of you guys who are watching the news and on social media, there will always be things happening in the world. So saying that the energy feels stagnant doesn't mean that there will be no events happening. Okay. Just keep that in mind. But it just feels like here's the overall tone within the energy that I'm sensing. Just a caveat as well, I don't feel like the new year starts in January. I have never felt good about the new year starting in January. It has never sat right with me, even when I was young. For me, the new year really, really feels like it starts in March every year. March, April feel really big to me. The spring equinox always feels really significant to me. I never feel like the new year starts in January. So that could be part of it too. I also feel like I'm very synced up to nature and synced up to the seasons. So I tend not to really like to do New Year celebrations or planning in the new year like in January and stuff like that. I do a little bit whatever my guides are guiding me to do and my higher self is guiding me to do. But most of the stuff that I do, I start to feel more of that energy come through in March. And it's like I turn into an Energizer bunny. I suddenly have all these ideas and wonderful things going on and all of that. So I tend not to like to overly focus on this type of energy now. It doesn't always feel right to me. But this year, I will say, feels a little bit different. Like it does feel like there is something there. There is something to be created. There's a little bit of planning going on. And that said, I want to always just like be mindful to tell people my personal perspective is you don't have to set a bunch of goals or like do a damn thing right now. You really don't. If it doesn't feel right for you, if you're not feeling good about this time frame, about this energy, and you don't feel motivated to plan, don't feel motivated to set goals, don't feel motivated at all, and you're still kind of in a resting, cocooning stage, let it be that. Let it be so. That is absolutely okay. Sometimes that's just like what we need and how we need things to be. And so I never want people to feel like they have to do things a certain way, or that if they're not doing this, they're not going to keep up. That's not true. It could be more so that you need a different rhythm and that your soul needs you to do things differently. So I just wanted to mention that right off the bat. So now I'm just bringing in the guides. I'm asking them what, from their perspective, what is the overall energy for 2026? And they said movement. Like in unison, they're all like movement, 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 movement. And they said it's sort of a slingshot year. Last year, everyone felt like they were being held back and pulled back and pulled back and pulled back and pulled back. And this is the year where it's like all of these dreams, these visions, these wishes, these ideas. And they said, you know, whatever you have them around, whatever subjects or themes in your own life, this is the year where you can kind of let go of that slingshot and really zoom forward. And this has come through before, but they keep saying this year is bright, it's fast, and they said, but we want people to be careful about they're playing Mars attacks. They said, I'm not sure why they flashed that, but Mars attacks popped in. And they're saying we want people to be mindful of the energy, though, to not be impulsive. They said use your precision, use your discernment, use your intuition with what you're doing and what you're planning. And they said be mindful with communication as well, because there might be some communication strategies that need to take place in order to really articulate and work together on things. And they're showing a lot of people like sort of feeling like, again, they said that a lot of people just like, you know, I need to do me. I need to like really stand up for myself. They said more and more authenticity. A lot of people being willing to stand up for what's right for them and for other people. But it feels like there is still, even though we're getting, you know, we're entering this like age of Aquarius, etc., it still feels like we are in this time period for a while where we're going to feel a lot of people wanting to be more we focused, but there will be a lot of, you know, kind of learning how to balance, being focused on the larger we and, you know, how we impact others, how we love others well, how we take care of each other in our communities. And they're showing me trying to balance that with, minding, tending, and caring for the self. And they keep showing me people learning how to take care of themselves while also taking care of others. They said this takes a lot of internal action and a lot of internal reflection. And unfortunately, some people are still kind of like working on that. And they said the collective really is going to be working on this for a very long time. So this isn't something where we want to expect perfection out of anyone, but they keep showing a lot of internal evolution that is connected to collective energy. So each person thinks they're alone, but they really have this cord of light that reaches up and connects to the larger source that we all come from. So I keep seeing all these people on Earth, and it's like I can see these cords of light that connect their heart up into this larger energy field, almost like it's like an energy, I wouldn't say a tentacle, but just like a cord that comes down, a connection point. And so really everyone is connected to this larger connection point, this creation of all that is, but they don't always remember that. So they're showing people feeling separate, but they said in 2026, we're going to see more and more people starting to feel called to move forward in ways that feel authentic and right and intuitive for them, where their heart and their gut is just calling them forward. They're starting to hear and honor themselves more. And they said, and the irony of this is that it's not selfish because it's actually going to bring them closer to their soul groups and to each other. Because when we follow our heart, yes, we might need to do some things that take us away from things and people and places that we used to put above ourselves. But at the same time, we're going to find exactly who we need to find that has been yearning for us and looking for us and part of a larger soul group or soul mission that are banding around and feeling called to do the same things, or will be counterparts for us or collaborators for us in life. And it's important that we allow ourselves to move forward. And so I want to also, they're bringing it forward to you guys, like, you know, hey, have you felt yourself doing this, but maybe you're clinging to the past or clinging to people from your past, clinging to, you know, I can't do this and have this relationship. I can't move forward in my life in this way and keep my marriage intact, or do this and be a parent to my children. They want to encourage you, like they keep saying, you don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Where there's a will, there's a way. And for a lot of people, you will find that you moving forward towards the things that you're really excited about this year, they keep showing it benefiting the people around you. Like it benefits the family, it benefits your friends. They said some people might balk at it at first, but you're going to really find a lot more support if you keep moving forward. And they keep saying you will find the right ways for you guys where you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And they're like, but if you got relationships or you got friends you got to leave behind, you know, like they're like, it's going to become obvious, and it's going to be a lot easier this year to just have that precision and that knowing to just move forward. The other piece they're showing me is creative streaks. And so I've said this before, but I've been feeling for a long time, for way, way, way long, that we are entering some sort of spiritual renaissance. And so what we're going to see more and more too is that, especially with 2026 coming into 2027, a heightened spiritual awakening. So a lot more connection to intuition, to mediumship, to knowing who we are inside, to shifting into this higher knowing and knowing that we are here for something more. And this is going to come from not as much of an ego state of, oh, I'm here for more and I'm here for more than you and blah, blah, blah. No, it's kind of more of like there's got to be more to life than slogging away at a job that I don't like, or buying things online, or living in fear of what other people think, or like has been a large collective calling to recognize this something more that we are here for. And this is where our spiritual evolution and our spiritual, I would say like wisdom and remembering actually comes from. It's that part of us, that soul self, that highest self that is connected to all and is part of all, that is calling us forward. And so this is part of what we're going to see happening even in en masse more and more in 2026 and 2027 and forward. Again, it's not going to be everyone all at once, but we're going to see so many more people entering into these states of higher consciousness more and more readily, where they are trusting their intuition, where they're having contact with the other side, whether it's a loved one, a guide, an ancestor, someone else's loved one. This is going to become more and more prominent. And in addition, we're also going to see, as part of the larger spiritual awakening that's happening, that a lot of people are going to start to revolt against what is not, what's not right for them, mind, body, and soul. Because as you have a spiritual awakening, what begins to happen is you really begin to change how you use your time and energy, because you can't go back to doing it the same way before. You can't hustle. You can't be in hustle culture, overworking. You can't keep, doing things the same way anymore, because it actually causes very quick, like it literally is like you'll be repelled from the old ways of doing things. And so we're going to see a lot of the beginnings of systemic change. And so they're pointing out Mamdani, and they said it's very important that this person is coming forward at this space and time, because one of the big changes we're going to begin to see, not just in 2026, but moving on into the next 5 to 10 years, is democratic socialism coming in more and more and more. And this also has to do with the fact that we are going to have younger and younger people coming into the political sphere, and people who have grown up seeing what happens when we can't or don't get involved. And when they keep showing this being a very large shift in terms of the spiritual awakening as well, because they're like, well, think about it, like for people to really truly like have the spiritual awakening and evolve, they can't keep doing things the same way anymore. So they can't be in war consciousness. We can't be in violence consciousness. We can't stay in fear consciousness and separated in attack. We have to recognize how we're all connected. And democratic socialism is just one. They're like, it's not the whole shebang, right? It's just a step toward it, toward that recognition. It doesn't have all the answers. It's not going to be the end all be all and the savior of all things, but it does show the shift in consciousness ever so slightly, right? And so I've said in the past, I think we're going to come to a point where we start to see the ends of political systems. I don't know if that's going to happen this year, but that is linked into a lot of the things that are going on now. And so, I don't, like, for example, I don't think we're going to see a two-party system anymore. I just don't think that even will remotely make sense. It's funny lately because I've been rewatching West Wing, and they talk about the same crap that we're struggling with now. We're seeing it back then. And that was in the 90s. So it's crazy, to think about that. We're still struggling with the same things. And that they were talking about the end to the two-party system and how important that would be way back when. So that all said, they're also showing me gardening and people being more connected to the planet and the earth, and people kind of being like, enough is enough. I need to do the things that feel right and nourishing for me, because this is how I have the energy I need to do what I need to do. So a bigger focus on health and well-being is going to come out of the fact that I think a lot of people won't be able to afford healthcare. So people will, I think we're going to see more and more people who are like, I have to do things that are nourishing, almost as like a preventative health move. Now, again, 2026, I think, and the years prior to this, we've seen some of this connection, people wanting to homestead more, people wanting to get a plot of land, no longer wanting to live, in suburbs or cities, a lot of people wanting to be more connected to nature. That is definitely part of a larger spiritual awakening. I also think it's been an important part of a healing journey for a lot of people who grew up in the hustle culture and saw that it would not pay off for them. That burnout required some of that reconnection to the earth, and maybe like some isolation and time focusing just on the self, farming, growing, a lot of their own vegetables and fruits, at least for portions of the year. Like returning to a different lifestyle for a little while. But what we're going to see more and more is even more emphasis on these types of things. 2026, I wouldn't be surprised if this becomes even more of a thing, and if it becomes even more of a movement. And one of the big representations that I have talked about in the past too, in terms of themes, is one of the things that will be really big is secondhand style culture. I think that's going to be like, it gives me very, I'm trying to think like what this reminds me of. I keep getting flashbacks to some movies in the 90s and people shopping at thrift stores or thrifting clothes and kind of being like, you bought that new? Dude, like you're not supposed to do that, So I think it's going to be much more mainstream, especially because we have so many movements where people are wanting to return to natural materials, but they can't buy or afford brand new clothes made with natural materials. And a lot of times we can't trust that they're actually made well. There's a lot of polyester and things. And I think we're going to see larger and larger movements away from mass production of clothes and physical items and things like that. I also think we will see, because a lot of people are getting the wool's being pulled off around corporate culture and corporations and how much damage they've been doing to the environment, to the psyche, their marketing, everything. I think we are going to see a lot of corporations sort of trying to clean up their acts. And I think what will be different in this next 5 to 10 year span is they won't be able to just throw up a section on their website that's about sustainability anymore. They won't be able to just greenwash things anymore. I think because of social media and because of how easy it is for things to come out on the internet, a lot of them will be found out. And I expect a lot more to come out, in this next several years about a lot of corporations and just how much damage they've been doing. And I think there will be certain ones that will have a lot more, like they're going to be held so much more accountable. And so again, part of this is going to be secondhand culture is going to come in secondhand clothing, secondhand shopping, thrift stores. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot more around thrifting culture coming up. Not just thrifting as in to buy a whole bunch of things and stockpile them in our closets. This is going to be more of a simplicity, less is more type of culture, which I've talked about in the past, but I see more of it coming in 2026. Now, the other piece of this is that with a spiritual awakening, you kind of disconnect from a lot of physical items and stuff. When I went through the very beginning of my awakening years and years ago, it was right before Christmas time. And I remember being completely disillusioned around Christmas and shopping. And at that time, I was like it felt so off to me. And when people were asking me what I wanted, I was like, I mean, I just want to have a nice holiday. I was more into I love the lights. I want to listen to the music. I want to spend time with family. I want to go get a nice meal together and laugh and like go to holiday markets and like, or like festivals. And like, it was more about the overall energy and people being together in the community and, the joy of it and the vibrancy of it. It wasn't about the physical items and the gifts. And so, that's just like an example of what begins to happen when you have a spiritual awakening. Now, do I still buy gifts for people or accept gifts for myself? Sure. Yes. Like we still have like gift lists in our family, for example, or like ideas that we give people like, like people like, to have different love languages. And I'm like, yeah, I can honor that. And so like we still have things like that and do things like that. But for me, that was a time when I went through a lot of needing simplicity because I was almost like clearing out a lot of mental and emotional clutter. And so a lot of physical clutter went with it. I think we will see greater and greater and greater movements toward this and a lot less of the focus on new, more, less focus on modernize this, what's brand new that, what's the trend here. Another significant theme that I saw this past year was the Nancy Meyers aesthetic. But it's not about just going and buying things to try and make it look that way. Her aesthetic is very lived in. I've collected and brought these items very intentionally into my home and they've been well loved for decades. This sofa, this blanket, these books, these keepsakes, these pictures, these photos. That's why her aesthetic is so popular, is because it's warm, it's inviting, it has a homey family touch. You can't just go to a store and just buy that and feel good about it. It's more the feel and the vibration and what it represents, which is home, family, connection, a life well lived, a lot of experiences and a safe place to come back to. It's not perfectly curated. It's not all monotone. It's not just one aesthetic or another. And so I keep seeing a lot of, I feel like that's a big representation of what we're going to see coming in terms of 2026's energy. And my guides are like bingo, spot on. The other aesthetic that I'm seeing that represents also the spiritual awakening, in a sense, is this more of an earthy, again, connected to nature, but sort of like pagan green witch type of aesthetic that I've been seeing. Now, I think it will be woven into people's homes in really unique ways, but I think we will see a lot more return to earthy, natural elements coming into the homes. Think people having really large herb gardens, learning how to grow their own plants and things like that indoors. Especially because the technologies to do so is becoming way more affordable. I mean, you can order lighting kits and stuff like that on Amazon, right? So like things are becoming more accessible and more affordable. I also think that with some of the things going on with droughts and stuff like that, if you're feeling called to do these types of things and to have natural elements in your home, to do more rituals or rites or things that connect you to your body, to nature, to herbalism, to even bringing, again, natural elements into the home as like decoration while clearing out. I keep seeing a lot of people like dumping things that feel flat, like flat energy to them. So plastics and items that maybe like even if they're made well, they don't have meaning and connection to you anymore, getting them donated. I feel like that's going to be an even bigger theme this year, is people recognizing like what has meaning to them and what items are holding vibration and consciousness that connects to them. Because as a spiritual awakening begins to happen, especially en masse, we start to become far more sensitive to things that don't carry the energy, frequency, or vibration that we want. I also believe this is why we'll see more thrifting and secondhand culture and secondhand stores. People who are extremely sensitive, and more of the population is becoming more clairsentient and more sensitive. Many of them can pick up a physical item and feel its energy and its vibration and where it was before and who it belonged to and whether or not it belongs with them. And so I've said this before on podcasts and on TikTok lives and stuff, but I love thrifted books. I love secondhand books. I would take a secondhand book over a new printed book any day. There is something about the energy of reading the book and feeling, what did this person who had this book before me think of it? What parts, like almost like I can almost imagine them reading it and feel and see them reading it. It's something very special to me. I can also feel if they didn't like it. I can feel if they just like gave it away with grace and were like, this just like where they've completely detached from it. And so I think we will see a lot more people experiencing that warmth, that tenderness. Again, think Nancy Meyers, like her aesthetic again is all about love and coziness and very well loved on items. It's not curated, right? Like you can't curate that. You have to slowly collect it and bring it in intentionally over years and years. And it's very unique from person to person. That's why people love that. And it's like, that's why people love this, because it reminds them of these homes growing up where it looked like a family lived there, right? Or like people loved their space and had brought their own warmth into the space. These objects don't have the warmth. We infuse them with that warmth, that energy, and that intention. So I think this year we will see even more of that secondhand thrifting, shopping culture, and things like that, because people are becoming more sentient to it. And people want, again, less of the mass market stuff, less of the mass production. They recognize what that's doing to the environment. And even if they don't normally think about it too much, they can feel more and more of the energy of the flatness and the drain of it. And I think this is a year where we choose a lot more conscious curation with physical items in general. In addition, some things that I've been seeing that I think are really interesting is people going on like thrifting crawls and stuff like that and antique shop crawls and all of those types of things. And I think it just shows that like this is an easy way for people to build and create community, and that this is something that people actually want to create community around, is that people are like actually arranging these and getting people together to meet together, new and old friends, to actually go on these like thrifting expeditions and have a good time together. The other thing that I think is going to be coming in really, really strong is, again, return to analog culture. This goes along with these things because as we reach into our spiritual awakening even more, what we will see is a lot of sensitivity, right? And I was talking about clairsentience opening up, etc. We're already seeing and how burned out people are en masse, and how people are recognizing that being on their phones and always having so much access to, a smart TV and then an iPad and then a laptop and then their phone and then their Apple Watch and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. People feel burned out and overconnected, and having that much technology around you is incredibly bad for your energy. It's really bad for your vibration. It definitely fucks with your brain waves. It definitely Fs with your well-being. And so I think we're going to see even more of a return to analog culture. And this is more, people wanting snail mail. This is people wanting magazines, but not just a pile of magazines that mean nothing. They want handmade, well-crafted, again, think like the whole secondhand culture and wanting well-made items that come from thrift or secondhand with real fabrics, things that stand the test of time. people want to hold things in their hands that have some sort of beautiful aesthetic, but not just aesthetic as in like, oh, like, you know, take this aesthetic and then throw it away, take this and then throw it away. No, they want things that they're going to keep and curate. So think this goes along with the Nancy Meyers thing, curated over years, over time. Tasteful, something that matches you, something that's authentic to you, something that feels right for you. You know where it came from. You know, I'm seeing a lot of focus on small batch too, and I think that's going to continue with a lot of art and a lot of curation. And so again, I think we will see a lot more return to certain aspects of analog culture. I also think a lot of people, there's going to be like even potentially like clubs, meetups, things like that. Like think how there's like Antiques Roadshow and there's like huge antique, you know, meetups and huge thrift malls and things like that open up, and it's like pop-up shops and events where it's all like thrifting marketplaces and stuff like that. And I've seen those increasingly over the last couple of years. I think we're going to see this more and more with handmade, well-crafted handmade items, but specifically things where it's like we would have used technology for it. So again, snail mail instead of text message and email, nice handwritten notes, and people returning to actually wanting to write and read and sit down with a good book. Book clubs, things like that already are like pretty big, but I think we're going to see more and more of these types of things. But I think there's going to be more people wanting to create them and not just consume them, because that's going to be a really big part of 2026, considering from what my guides are pointing out, 2025 was a year of consume, because people were exhausted and overwhelmed and didn't know what was going on from day to day. And so in order to numb out and to self-regulate, what a lot of people were doing was scroll, consume. And a lot of people were so dysregulated that they would try to feel better by scrolling and getting dopamine hits and knowing what was going on. And as we saw, that just made us go into a worse and worse burnout. So what is beginning to happen is we're going to see, like we'll still have our social media and technology, etc., but we will see a growing wave of people in 2026 who are wanting to return to analog culture, who are kind of, again, purging the things that are too much to them. Too much stuff, too much time on the phone, too much tech. I think we're actually going to see also, because we have so many people that are and we've had so much stuff come out with AI, and AI is everywhere now, and people know what it's doing to the planet, what it's doing to energy. I mean, like everyone was talking about their energy bills over the summer and how we're all paying for these data centers when we didn't agree to that, what they're doing to water supply, the potential droughts. I live in Colorado, so we're very aware of how, you know, these energy centers could really impact us here, because we already are at risk for having like dust storms and stuff like that out in Denver area and, you know, other areas. And so what we're going to, I think, see more and more too is this revolt against AI. I did say in the past that I saw AI staying, but being very refined in terms of what it's going to be used for. I think that's going to continue to happen. It's not all going to come in 2026. But I think there is going to be a lot of people wanting, like being very curious, still wanting to use it, et cetera, but then it slowly is going to become kind of like just another gadget or just another app and not be this big new shiny toy anymore. And so I also get this sense of there being almost like a tech bubble burst or an AI bubble burst. I don't know how to describe it any other way, but it almost feels like a bubble popping. And that could be about stocks. That could be about, again, like almost like the big internet bubble. Like it just feels like almost like, again, it doesn't serve the purposes that we need, at least not in this next year. And so people just kind of go, I don't really want this anymore. I also think because of AI, people are going to have a thirst to be able to do the things that they want to do. Like they want to create their own art. So I think the emphasis on what is not AI, and when we can tell like this was hand painted by someone, and people having to show their process and show their hand paintings and show them curating certain projects, not just curating items, but actually creating them. And that handcrafted and quality type of material and art and music, etc., is going to become ever more popular. I think we will find creators who really stand out because their process and the materials they use, everything is going to be what stands out. And people are going to, we're already seeing this, for example, again, with like snail mail clubs. And I do follow a lot of art creators. And what I have noticed with some of them is when they share where they make money from, most of them have said that the vast majority of the money that they make is from selling actual prints. So you can buy digital copies of a lot of their pieces of art and then get it printed somewhere and like get it framed yourself and all of that type of stuff. No, they make the most money from the actual physical pieces of art and even from prints of it. And these snail mail clubs, like some of them make quite a lot of money. And that just shows me people want this. People want real handmade pieces of art and meaningful things. And it, like, people want to feel connected. They want to feel, it feels very like old school in a sense, but new again. And so, and very, like, they want to support these small creators. They want to support people that are still making art, you know, designing architecture, you know, doing photography, like people who are really doing the stuff, who are really like getting into all of this. And so, and taking time with the process. So I think we're going to see this really, really, really showing itself in 2026. And so it's going to be, kind of a creative and spiritual renaissance in that sense. And I think that's only going to keep going after 2026. I don't see like an end in sight with any of that. But I think this is going to be really fascinating because it's going to start with a bunch of small individual creators doing things separately. And I keep going like, are we going to go through another cycle of them getting bigger and bigger and bigger and then needing to hire employees and then getting bigger and bigger? And it feels like a lot of them will have learned from the downfall of certain corporations in the past. So it does not feel like we will go in the same loops anymore. It feels like a lot of people right now are just like, I just want to make my art and like mail my stuff or like, you know, have not just soft, but a life that they, like, in a place that they enjoy living in and they want to go explore. And that's the energy I keep getting overall, is that a lot of people will be focused more on simplicity, in order to have more of what they need. And so I see a lot of this art and this curation, the simplicity in the home. A lot of people not, you know, it being very like less is more. I keep seeing a woman walking around her big home with a glass of wine, and she has everything. She has all the stuff. She's checked all the boxes. Her kids are grown, etc., you know, or they're in high school and like in college and stuff. And she's walking around this big empty home with all these fancy modern things, and she doesn't see herself in it. She doesn't see this home representing her. She doesn't feel like this is who she is anymore. And she's wondering like, how did I end up with this house, right? How did I end up living this life? Like, when did I become so focused on this stuff? I think there will be a lot of these epiphanies in this next year or two. And I do see a lot of the age, it's like the 40 plus woman, going through this big time. I think that tends to happen around these ages as well. In addition, I think it's going to be happening even more because of some of the cultural things that have been going on. So I think there's going to be a lot of that as well. Something else that I think that we're going to see more too is a lot more cultural tourism. I feel like a lot of there's going to be more of a push for people to be exploring, and not just exploring abroad, but taking classes and taking courses and actually trying to get into schools there. It doesn't feel like it's going to be all this year or a ton of people this year, but I'm wondering almost if we're going to see this year and in the next, 5 to 10 years, more emphasis on cultural tourism and more emphasis on people going out of the country and out of the States or out of Western culture to go learn from other cultures. I do think there's going to be more of a sway and a push toward people traveling. Actually, what I'm seeing a bunch is like Africa, and especially then I'm also seeing Honduras is popping up in my head, South America, and then different parts of Europe as well. And then I'm seeing bits of East Asia, and it's hard to describe, but I'm seeing a lot of like, I've been seeing this for a long time, but a lot of like people sort of trying to get out of the country, or more emphasis on people realizing like, hey, we have to live while we're alive, and people wanting to learn from other cultures, from other perspectives, this does not feel like it's just people going abroad to learn languages. It feels like it's like people wanting to learn from different educational systems, see how different people do things. And I think we're already seeing, there's already seeds being planted of this for the last like while here, but I think it's going to become even greater. I also think, again, there's going to be some sort of like incentive or extended programs and things like that that are offered to people to get them to go and explore and like look around out of the country. Now, it's not clear to me where those are going to come from. If they'll come, I don't know that they'll come from our government in the US, but it could come from like other schools and other cultures. I almost am wondering about them offering more scholarships or grants or advertising to us and stuff like that, maybe exchange programs. But I keep seeing there being more of an emphasis on that. This is not just for college kids, by the way. This is like, I'm seeing like people taking their younger children to learn abroad. And maybe there's some sort of programs where there's a going back and forth or something like that. But I think we're going to see more and more of that. And this is not just connected to our current political system and a lot of people wanting to leave and get out. This feels like this goes way into the future past this current administration. So I just wanted to mention that as well. In terms of the overall energy of 2026, now healthcare system, I've said this before, and I think that this is unfortunate, but I think we're seeing the beginning of the end. And I think that there's going to be a big push for universal healthcare made by setting up the system currently to completely break down and fail. I keep seeing, now I don't think that was like the goal of what's going on, but I think it will be the opportunity. I don't know how this will take effect, how much time. I don't know exactly, that feels very like it's unclear. It's muddy, or it's just not being shown to me right now. But I have been getting a lot for a while about universal healthcare. So I think this year we're going to see more and more of those seeds planted around a potential universal healthcare put into place for the United States. I also get this really strong sense of, first, the wool had to be pulled off of the eyes, and people had to get angry enough. And they weren't going to get angry enough if they were kind of sitting cushy and pretty where they were, at least the vast majority of people. So what I keep sensing is that there will be some bigger pushes for bigger reforms. I also think some of this is tied to, like I said, like some shifts away from the two-party system and into something that would be akin to democratic socialist views and stuff like that, especially as we have younger and younger people getting into reforms and getting into politics. I do think a lot of people are going to step more and more into calling this year. This is going to be big. So I kept saying I do feel like we're going to see a lot of people who have maybe been avoiding their callings or trying to play it safe, or feeling like, if I go toward my calling, it's going to upset my parents, or it's going to upset my husband, or, my friend group won't understand, or whatever. I think we will have more and more young people getting into a lot of the changes and reforms, and being part of the changes and reforms that need to happen systemically across the board and in our political systems. This year feels like it's the year where people are like, I've had enough of waiting, because 2025 was such a year of burnout and consuming. This is the year of creativity and moving forward. But we have to remember, Rome wasn't built in a day. So it's not all going to happen at once. I know a lot of people are going to feel a lot of pressure this year to move forward fast. You do not need to hold yourselves back, but just remember, you also don't need to slam on the gas right now and race. It's not a race. This is definitely a marathon. It's not a sprint. Okay. So definitely take your times. But if you have been feeling like I've been feeling called to learn more about this or that, politics or otherwise, you're feeling more called to learn about different subjects, to go back to school, to explore, to travel, this is a good year to do it. It's a really good year to be studying, to be going abroad, to be picking up the books, learning about the things, branching out into the community locally and otherwise. This is going to be a good year for this, because this is a time again of like this larger spiritual renaissance. So your soul might be calling you to learn and do and try new things. This happens a lot with spiritual awakenings, no matter what year it is. But this is going to be we're going to see a lot more of this en masse. I also think a lot of people, again, are so tired of like living through their phones and living through other people's experiences. There are more and more people who are going to be like finding new ways to do the things that they want to do. And I think also there's going to be such a high demand for changes with our social emotional programming and our educational programming, and, access to these different experiences. I think we're going to see a lot of changes start to happen there, whether it's organizations getting started. Maybe you guys are supposed to start an organization that helps kids do study abroad or travel or something like that. You never know what it might be, but we will see a lot of people really doing stuff like that. In addition, again, I keep getting a lot of around going back to healthcare system. I think a lot of people are going to be diving into sound healing, sound baths, herbalism. I've said this before in episodes 8 and 9 of my podcast, which has to do with predictions, themes coming in the future. I think we're going to see even more and more people getting into things again that are like preventative health that make them feel good from the inside out. So a lot of people experimenting with new things because they can't all get the healthcare that they need. So everything from deeper therapy work to sound healing to in sound baths to herbalism, to even things like I do think we're going to have a massive move toward vegetarianism. I'm not going to lie. I've been sensing and seeing that one coming for a long time. That does not feel like it's all going to happen in 2026. So keep that in mind, guys. But I think we will see by the end of 2026 more themes with vegetarianism and people starting to be more and more vegetarian. Why? Partially environment. Also because spiritually, I think a lot of people are going to just feel like their bodies need it. I don't know how to describe it any other way. They just will feel like their bodies need it. Also, my guides have said it time and time again that the best food you can eat, if you're going to, in terms of consuming food, is to eat fruit or vegetables that have been freshly picked right off the tree, right off the vine, right out of the ground. And so because they're the most alive when you eat them then. I also feel like there's going to be more emphasis on energetic work, working with plants, working with nature, learning how to send energy and receive energy, things like that. Using vibration, using frequency, different things like that, light therapy. We're already seeing a huge thing about light therapy happening, red light therapy, blue light therapy, etc. I really believe we're going to see a lot more about this, but I think the main thing we're going to see is a lot of people reconnecting to nature because they don't have a choice. So I think this will be really, really interesting to start to see. In addition, we are having this surge in neurodivergence, right? And a lot of this is people should have been diagnosed a long time ago, but they were at the beginning of this. And so, and this wasn't a diagnosis yet, and that wasn't a diagnosis. And they changed, all of the symptoms and the criteria for, autism years and years ago in the DSM. And that changed like who could have the autism diagnosis and ADHD and yada, yada. So we're going to continue to see a surge in neurodivergence. We're also going to see, more and more understanding, which will lead to more and more differentiation in the different types of autism, because I see types coming up. And I keep seeing more clarification between ADHD, autism, and autism, which we already know that there's some overlap and there's some differentiation. I think we're going to see more and more emphasis on understanding what's CPTSD and what, which parts, it's like a Venn diagram, right? There are certain things that they all have in common, but there are certain things that are CPTSD. They're not autism and they're not ADHD. And when you live in a world that chronically dysregulates you, it's almost impossible to function and not have CPTSD. And so, again, I do see more and more connection to nature, more and more people going, I don't know what else to do. This is free. This is the only thing I have, which will in turn create more not just connection to nature, but care for it, and protection, like people, coming alive again. This will also help the larger spiritual awakening. And so these surges in neurodivergence, I think, so a lot of people actually who have ADHD and autism naturally gravitate toward nature and do very well when they're outdoors more. For example, I just was listening to another podcast, and one of the women on there, I'm blanking on her name right now. I will have to look it up after this and put it in the show notes. But she was on a psychic story, and she was also on the telepathy tapes, and she was talking about her son who, when he was alive, he had autism, and what he used to do is he used to literally lay on the ground when he would get overstimulated and overwhelmed, because it was the only thing that made him feel better. Or he would go float in water. And I was like, of course he did. Of course he did. These things both help with that internal pressure. And they're both natural elements. So he would literally go gravitate into nature and he would just go lay on the ground. I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. And so I think we are going to see more and more awareness around this. I also think we are going to see more and more doctors starting to face that this is necessary, and more therapists. And we're going to see more get into nature, go for a walk, get in the sun type of prescription types of things. I think it's going to be a little controversial at first, but I do think we're going to start looking at things more holistically, right? So, like what in the life needs to change, what in the person's routines need to change, what else can we do to support these people, not just autism and ADHD, but the average person as well who's struggling with anxiety, depression, etc. And so I think it's going to be a really interesting time when it comes to that stuff as well. And I also, I've just been seeing more and more, therapists, especially therapists that have only been in practice for, 10 years or less, who are just more aware of like how things work holistically. So on that note, I think we will see more and more therapists who understand the connection between vitamin and mineral deficiencies and hormone problems, and psychiatric needs and mental health. There's already a growing movement around this, but we can no longer just keep saying, all anxiety is just anxiety. Sometimes when people are actually sick with something and they actually have cancer, a lot of people who have cancer, when they're asked like, hey, what were your first symptoms? And they really think about it, some of their first symptoms were anxiety. And like they didn't know why they felt anxious in their body. And it came from nowhere and they couldn't explain it. Not trying to freak anyone out. I'm not saying anyone out there has cancer, not a medical professional, can't medically diagnose anything. But there is a growing understanding that there are some things and illnesses that can be going on in the body that can also cause certain mental health things. So like, for example, pandas and stuff like that, can cause major mental health and mood changes overnight. And so, there's going to be, I believe, less siloing between psychiatric health, mental health, and emotional health and medical, in the body. So we're no longer going to be keeping the mental health and the consciousness away from the body. And I keep seeing this almost like blending coming together, and 2026, I do think is going to see more of that. Again, it's not going to be the only year. It's going to take some time. But I do keep seeing that there will be more and more programs coming out in universities and colleges, where they're going to be focusing on this more and more, because they can no longer keep these things separate. Now, again, won't all happen in 2026, but I think there will be some significant developments and maybe even some more programs start to do this in 2026. I also wonder if there's going to be a couple of influencers who are licensed therapists or medical professionals where they go more viral this year for talking about these things. I keep seeing someone sitting on some sort of, I'm not familiar with who this person is, but it keeps feeling like they're some sort of doctor. Like they work in an ER type of doctor, or pediatric ER or something like that. And they're talking about the things that they're seeing, and they're talking about this overlap. And they're on like a Today Show type of thing. They're on, a main news channel. So I just want to mention that as well. So I keep seeing that we're going to have some more movement towards this in 2026, even if it doesn't all happen this year. Keep in mind, events can shift and change, but I do keep seeing that there will be some interesting momentum made there as well. I'm also picking up and hearing something about Ocala National Forest. I'm not super sure what we're going to see around the National Forest and National Park Services and things going on there. I do see some almost like butting of heads over certain spaces. The Everglades are popping in my head as well. But there's going to be definitely some... I think there's going to be some sort of fight or a little bit of an uproar over one or more of these parks and spaces. I also keep getting something around some event that happens, but it causes way more activism. Sometimes there is a fight on a national level over a space with drilling rights. Sometimes it's like an oil spill or something like that, but I keep getting something going on with that area. Sometimes it's a natural event, but this feels like something I keep seeing people yelling and screaming and like absolutely enraged. So I get the sense that this might be a man-made problem or caused by mankind. Now, I'm not for sure on this, but it does keep popping in my head in terms of 2026. And again, I think it's something I keep seeing it doing like red turning to blue. So it causes some people to actually care and get involved in some political activism as well, because it's like environmental activism. Unfortunately, sometimes people don't really change their thought processes and, caring about certain spaces, caring about certain legislation until it hits them where it hurts, until it hits them in their hometown, or, happens in their favorite national park or their backyard or whatever. But I keep sensing something happening there and being shown and having that pop in my head for 2026. Now, again, nothing is set in stone. It may happen later. It may, not be that big of a deal at the end of the day, may not happen at all. But I just wanted to throw that out there because that was popping in really, really strongly. I do keep getting something around national parks in general. And there may be being a little bit more of a movement toward protecting them coming forward in 2026 as well. Now, in terms of timeframes, I want to say too, there's a lot of really great energy around April. It feels very fiery, which is to be expected. But there's a lot of really great energy around April and almost this like pickup that I sense happening. And it feels like March, April, May. Now I feel this every year because the springtime energy just really jives with me. I feel like that springtime is really more of the new year than January 1st. January 1st it just feels like we're still slogging through. We don't know what day it is. It makes no sense to have the new year there. I'm always like, who decided this? Like, this is ridiculous. What captain of industry made this happen? But the springtime always feels very vibrant and very alive for me. And so I want to say too, for those of you guys who are just not feeling it yet, again, wait until the springtime, see how you're feeling come like March 17th is kind of standing out in my mind. Even early to mid-March might feel a little bit better, a little bit lighter and brighter. I also just keep getting some, this feeling of like a lot of people having some sort of, again, extra like shift or awakening coming in April. I have no idea astrologically what's going on, but that just keeps popping in my head over and over. And then, what I keep sensing too is like June and July feel really bright as well. Again, it feels overall this year is like the year that Stella got her groove back. But again, We have to really let go of what we thought we needed, of what we thought was right. And this will be a big year where we're much more sensitive and much more sentient. So for those of you guys who are more sensitive and sentient, really focus on what's lighting you up versus what is not lighting you up, what's draining you, what feels heavy, what feels wrong, even if it's something that you've done forever, even if it's a tradition, even if it is a routine, a belief system, an item in your home, a way that you normally eat. If it doesn't feel good for you anymore, you're going to feel it more than anything this year. And it's going to make you sick and sad to try and stay with it or try and keep that thing there. So really be paying attention to what doesn't feel right anymore. Okay. And pay attention to what does feel right. Okay, this is going to be a big year again where you're going to really, really notice it. I keep seeing people trying to scramble up a brick wall, and it's like, no, like the road has ended. You can't go that way anymore. The road turned left, and people are like, come around this way, and we can walk around it. And it's almost like, hey, you have to choose to stop fighting it. You have to choose not to try to go in the direction that you can't go anymore. That's not the right way. Don't fight for the wrong way. Let yourself move with the flows and changes that are happening naturally in your life and naturally in the world. And you're going to come out of this feeling really, really good. Again, this will be a year where if you can stay connected to your intuition, connected to your guidance, connected to that sense of flow, you will really come out on top of this. You will come out of this surfing the wave. You will really reap the harvest of it by the end of the year and probably much sooner. Again, it's a year where the guide said there can be very fast momentum, very fast springboardy energy. But if you're fighting to keep what does not need to stay, you're going to be really, really struggling. Okay, you're going to feel it more than ever. You're going to see the negative results of it more than ever. This is going to be a big year where we are feeling it and we are just following inspiration, following the intuitions, following the inspiration, following the intuitions, and following and trusting when we need to rest. Okay, knowing immediately that's not right for me, or yes, this is a big yes. That's a big that's a big or this lights me up, that doesn't light me up. This feels like it's calling me. This is inspiring for me. This is exciting for me, or this feels dull and heavy and lifeless. Like, you really need to trust your knowing and your inner authority. Really trust how you need to make decisions and follow what works for you. Pay attention to when you have nagging doubts, dread, anxiety, frustration. It almost always is a signal or a sign. Heaviness, lack, anger, always a sign that you're heading in the wrong direction. Okay. So if you guys have any questions about this, anything else you're wondering about, let me know. I can always ask the guides again. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this podcast episode. Now, as a final thought, in terms of weather patterns and things like that, I can't say across the board, right? But I do see more issues with flooding coming. Now, this has been talked about for quite some time. I've been talking about it. Climate change activists have been talking about it for a long time. And I believe I talked about it in previous episodes. So episodes, I think 8 and 9, it was mentioned somewhere in there as well, or in other episodes. But essentially, I see a lot of West Coast flooding coming. I'm wondering if this is maybe why I picked up some stuff about the Everglades too, in Ocala. But I do see some stuff that has to do with something about flooding and people. I just heard the Bay, so I don't know if that's San Francisco Bay or a different bay. But I keep seeing something about flooding coming up, and I think we're going to see this increasingly, like so many people have been talking about in the years to come. It feels like 2026 is we're going to maybe have a couple of specific events that happen around this. In addition, I have had premonitions and dreams of the future where I was like seeing someone buying waterfront property way in the future, and people talking about we can't buy property all the way up here because this area is going to flood. And then the person next to them was like, what are you talking about? It never floods here. This is never an issue, yada, yada. It's never been an issue before. The way these homes are built, you'll never have to worry about that. And this person was like, no, I can feel it. We're going to have an issue with flooding. That felt to me like maybe it's connected to this, but I just know that I've had premonitions, dreams, etc. about tidal waves and tsunamis and flooding over the years. And that's the other piece that I keep seeing as well, is I wouldn't be surprised if we don't have another tsunami event. I could see something happening with that as well. I don't know, it just keeps kind of like flashing in my mind. Now, it's not to say it'll definitely happen. Like I said, things can always shift and change. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a tsunami on one of the coasts as well in this upcoming year. But the flooding just keeps feeling very, very clear, very, very obvious to me that there's going to be some sort of flooding. And on that super fun note, if you have questions, if you have anything else you're wondering about, feel free to submit those, and you could definitely inspire the guides to talk about your answer your question or talk about your topic on a future podcast episode. I'm curious, what have you guys been feeling about what's coming in 2026? What have you been feeling about the overall energy? I would love to hear your thoughts, get your questions and more for a future episode of the podcast. If you didn't know, I just opened up a Patreon tier called the Ascend tier. I just had this knowing that I had to do this for a couple months before the holidays. And I had this feeling of do it right before the beginning of the year or right before January. And it's really for people who want spiritual awakening support. You are building momentum. You're going through a lot of changes. You want to use this energy in this year well. You want it to be that good springboard. But maybe you're like, well, I'm still kind of going through my awakening. I'm still figuring some things out. And I could use some extra support. This will be the perfect group because you can get monthly readings. And private readings. And in addition, I'm doing a monthly trance-channeled message where I fully step out and let a guide or teacher of the highest truth, love, and consciousness step in and channel through me while I'm in a trance state. So I will be sharing those monthly within the group. And then you guys will also each get a private reading where you get channeled messages and an extra support for your spiritual awakening or other things that you are dealing with. And as always, if you have requests for topics for the podcast, things that you want to hear about from the guides, things that you want to hear about or learn about from me, feel free to add those in and send those to me via the link in the show notes. There is a lovely page about the podcast where you can submit all of your fun stories and your questions and all the times that your loved ones have visited you, your questions about signs and synchronicities from the other side, or how the spiritual awakening works, and all of those types of things. Feel free to use the link in the show notes or in the bio to submit those. And I might just use yours for a future episode of the podcast. And thank you so much for everyone just listening to this longer episode. I hope that this was really fun and beneficial for you guys. As more comes through, I will do more updates with the guides and the team from the other side. But for now, it feels like that's all. Thank you, everyone.